What's going on, everybody? What's going on? How are we doing today? We are back. We are here. We are alive. Can we get this microphone off and stuff? Okay, see how this and he's so pretty. What the fuck? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? What's going on? Let me get a little adjusted here. That's fine. Yeah, you know, I got some thoughts here. Yeah, it's been a couple of days since the last time we were on here, so we've got a lot of stuff going on, and I really sit back and figure out, how to approach, what to talk about, how to talk about. I think we got something pretty solid here worked out. What are you doing, Boof? Get that booty up. Get that booty back up on that bed. Go on. Sit. Um, you love that bone. All right, all right, all right. Here we go again. Uh, Shout out to Epic the Don for continuing to make good shit. You know what I mean? So we are back. We are back on Probably Shouldn't Say This. And today, as you know, we're talking about the long game. Well, here we go. We're going to talk about how we got here. 70 years of, American intelligence asset management. Okay. So, as you know, we're going to be doing something different today than what we normally be doing. We're not just talking about random conspiracy theories or speculation. We're going to be establishing something that's been happening. Okay. This is something that is documented, verifiable, institutional fact for the better part of a fucking century. Okay. We're talking about how intelligence agencies, specifically the United States intelligence apparatus and its comparative counterparts around the world, recruit, position, and deploy what they call assets. Okay. Now, what we're thinking, right? Here's what we're probably thinking right now. Oh, God. It's another conspiracy podcast. No, it's not. We're not doing that today. What we're doing is establishing the institutional methodology, the actual way these things work, based on declassified records, congressional testimony, named individuals, and historical documentation. Then, once we understand how this machinery operates, we're going to look at some specifics, okay? And we're going to ask, does this person's trajectory align with how intelligence agencies position their assets? Okay, that's the question of the day. Okay, does their family background, education, career path, relationships, and institutional placement match the pattern we see repeated across decades? Just a question, right? Nothing big over here going on, just a couple of questions. And here's the thing, we're not saying this person is an asset. We're saying, given everything we know about how intelligence agencies operate, given the documented patterns of recruitment and placement and spanning from 1935 until today, given the behavioral indicators that consistently appear across multiple confirmed cases, what does the evidence suggest? What's the likelihood? What would the purpose be? What would be the value? Okay. And also, I mean, I mean, that's really what I honestly, I don't think we're getting into anything else today. That's pretty much it. So we're going to be tracing this from the OSS through the Cold War, through modern intelligence operations, and we're going to be looking at a couple of different things. We're going to be looking at how KGB recruited, how the Mossad recruited, how the CIA recruited, the consistent patterns between those three agencies, and then we're going to examine one specific case and see if we're gonna see if these pieces don't fit into any of these categories, just to make sure, right? Because nowadays we just have to be extra careful about everything we do before we do it. So we're going to see if these pieces don't fit just a little teeny tiny bit. Okay. So let's go back. Let's go back to 1935, right? So before the CIA existed, before Pearl Harbor, before World War II really ramped up, there was a question that American leadership was facing. How do you gather intelligence? How do you know what's happening in other countries? How do you run covert operations? We didn't have an apparatus for this. We had the Army, we had the Navy, we had the FBI, which was domestic, but there was no centralized American intelligence service. And in 1941, excuse me, numbers are all mixed up. That changed in 1941. But here's what's interesting. It didn't happen overnight. The framework for it was being built years earlier. Okay. Now we're going to go back and we're going to start with a gentleman by the name of William Wild Bill Donovan. Okay. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, Donovan was a Wall Street lawyer. He was plugged in back in 1941. President Roosevelt was convinced by Donovan to create what became known as the Office of the Coordinator of Information. All right. Now, this quickly became known as the Office of Strategic Services, or the OSS. And this organization, which officially began operations in June of 1942, became the template for literally everything the CIA would later do. Okay. Now here's what matters for most of our conversation here today. And that's that Donovan wasn't starting from scratch. He was recruiting from existing networks. He was recruiting from Ivy League graduates. He was recruiting from academics. He was recruiting from Wall Street lawyers. He was recruiting from people from families that had already had connections to the government, intelligence, or foreign service. He understood something very fundamental, all right, guys? And that's the people who were easiest to recruit were the ones who were already moved in those circles, okay? So I'll repeat that for you, okay? He found the easiest people to recruit were the ones that were already in that circle, okay? So instead of getting a guy and training him to be see, here's how the CIA and the FBI wants to fuck with your head. They think that you're all going to be thinking it's going to be running like Fast and Furious, right? Now, if you remember in Fast and Furious, they had a guy infiltrate the team in order to learn all the stuff in the circle and then figure out who was, fucking stealing the trucks, right? That's not how it goes. What they would have done was more likely they would have contacted somebody who was already on the inside and then had that person building a case against them. Now, I don't know if I've ever seen that in any movies either, but I'm pretty sure I have, all right? Because I'm pretty sure that's also what happened in fucking Fast and the Furious. They had another guy who was in undercover. He was working on the inside because he already had ties, right? That's how they do it, right? They don't look for people to mold into these positions. They look for people in these positions to mold into their needs, okay? But that's neither here nor there, okay? Or is it? Anki, you already ate. What are you doing over there, boof? You are such a boofer. You are such a boofer. You got boogers all in your eyeballs. Look at all that. That's gross. Look at that. That's gross. Go lay down. Anyways. Yes. So he understood something very fundamental, clearly. And that's that people that were the easiest to recruit were the ones that had already moved in those circles. Okay. These are people who had already had educational pedigree, who already understood how power worked in America, okay? He's not looking for some dipshits to teach. He's looking for the smart ones that already know. So by 1942, the OSS had approximately 12,000 personnel at their disposal. Some of these were military, some were civilian, some were recruited contractors, okay? And the organization was divided into several different branches. There was the Secret Intelligence Branch, which conducted espionage, the Counterintelligence Branch, the Special Operations, the Morale Operations Branch, which is now Morale Operations Branch is psychological warfare. PSYOPs, psychological operations. So if you ever hear something about morale operations, it's a psychological operation to convince you to think or feel a certain way that you normally would not think or feel in that scenario. Okay. And there was also research and analysis. But what's crucial to understand, okay, is that the OSS from the beginning operated on a principle. You recruit people, you place them in positions where they can access intelligence, you coordinate their activities towards institutional goals, and when the war ended, the OSS was disbanded. Okay. So you have to take into consideration, you have to remember that the personnel did not disappear, right? The OSS disbanded, but the personnel did not disappear. They became the core of what would become the CIA. So let's talk about some of those specific people because this is where names really fucking matter. Okay. Now, a lot of times they'll be like, oh, names don't matter. Names don't matter. In a lot of situations, they really don't. Believe it or not, there's a lot of fucking times in which names really aren't important at all whatsoever. Who the person is far less irrelevant than the fucking pattern of what the fuck it is, usually. All right. But in this scenario, they matter. Okay. Names are a big deal with this stuff. Okay. So names are what make history real. It's what makes that shit fucking real. It goes from a conspiracy theory to this is fucking real as soon as you start putting names and identities in actual positions into these situations. Okay. So let's talk about some of these specific people. Okay. The first one we're going to be talking about is a gentleman by the name of William J. Casey. Okay. William Casey was a lawyer from Long Island. So far, out of the names that have been officially dropped, 2 of them have been lawyers. We're going to keep track. Okay. He graduated from Fordham University in 1934, and he took his law degree from St. John's University. During the war, he worked for the OSS, right? Eventually becoming the head of the Secret Intelligence Branch in Europe. He was coordinating agents, running operations, managing people behind enemy lines. All right. This is the foundational training for what intelligence work actually is. After the war, he returned to private business, but then the Cold War began. Okay. And when the Cold War began, he would eventually return to government. And in 1981, when Ronald Reagan appointed him director of Central Intelligence, okay, he became one of the most powerful intelligence officials in American history. But the point is, he started out in the OSS. He learned the methodology in that institution. Pin him right there. OSS. That's 2 for 2 now. Okay. Now we're going to talk about a name that we can't keep out of our fucking mouths, even if they paid us to. And that would be Allen Dulles. Allen Dulles was a Wall Street lawyer. That's 3 already. God damn, we're going fast on these lawyers. And from Wall Street, no less. But we're just talking here, people, okay? But yes, Allen Dulles was a Wall Street lawyer and a partner at Sullivan and Cromwell, okay? Now, I take deep personal fucking, like I have a personal connection to one of the individuals that was just named within the last 5 minutes. A deep familial tie by blood to one of those individuals, which is why, for me personally, this one hurts a little bit more than normal because, like, really, like it just really fucking hurts. But that's irregardless of the fact. That's why we're talking about this, because then you realize that there's connections deeper than you fucking realize. You might not even realize you're related to one of these fuckers. But yes, he was the only brother, though, of John Foster Dulles. The Dulles brothers. Anybody who knows who the Dulles brothers probably knows where I'm going with this. And if they don't know where I'm going with this, hold on to your butts. Okay? So, he was the brother of John Foster Dulles, who would become the Secretary of State, right? So his brother, Secretary of State, Allen, he is the director of the CIA, right? So they're very, very powerful individuals in both of their fields. Now, once again, if you remember anything about the historical timeline in relations to the Dulles brothers, you'd understand, for me, why this is like, what the actual fuck, right? But maybe not. Maybe you're just like, so what? So what? Okay, so that's what we're talking about, though. That's just all we're talking about right now. But yes, in 1941, after Pearl Harbor, Dulles joined the OSS as Agent 110. This is his actual designation. If you want to go online right now and look that up, you can look up. His actual designation was Agent 110. And he requested assignment to Switzerland, where he had prior connections from his international business work. In Switzerland, Dulles became the OSS station chief and negotiated significant German intelligence during the war. Okay? When the OSS was dissolved in 1945, Dulles went back to private law practice. Okay? Okay. Sure. But in 1951, he was brought into the CIA. Okay? By 1952, under Eisenhower, he became the first civilian director of Central Intelligence. He would serve as CIA director from 1953 to 1961, overseeing the Bay of Pigs, the coup in Iran, Guatemala, MKUltra, and numerous other fucking operations. Okay? The point, Dulles was recruited into the OSS based on his background, trained in intelligence work, and then the Cold War intelligence apparatus needed leadership. He was positioned into that role. Okay. This is the pattern we need to understand. Intelligence agencies don't recruit from random. They recruit from networks. They look for certain things such as your education level, your family background, your ideological alignment, your institutional connections, and what they call vulnerability, meaning what does this person want? What are their needs? What are their ambitions? It's a give and a take, right? They want something, we need something from them. If we can somehow get them what they want without giving them what they want while getting what we need from them without telling them what it is that we need, then we win. That's what they really want to do. But, it's usually a give and take thing because, that's how life is. But, we'll get into that a little. We're getting there. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Okay. But yes, this is the pattern. Okay. This is the pattern. Now, let's look at Operation Paperclip because I love fucking talking about it. It's probably like the most mind-boggling thing ever on the fucking planet, but somehow like I don't think it gets enough attention. I feel like this shit needs to be talked about even more. But this is critical to understanding how intelligence asset recruitment actually works, okay? Because it shows you the calculation that goes into it. So at the end of World War II, Donovan and Allen Dulles, both OSS leadership, made a recommendation to FDR. They recommended that Nazi intelligence officers, scientists, and industrialists be allowed to enter the United States after the war. They recommend their earnings be placed on deposit in American banks. They recommend that they be protected from prosecution. Why? Because they had skills and knowledge the United States wanted to capture before the Soviets did. Totally logical sense. You know what I mean? Just kill them, but that's just me. But that's also wrong, apparently. Um, but yes, in September of 1945, just weeks after the war ended, the United States we created a program, and the program was specifically used to recruit Nazi scientists and bring them to the United States. This program was known as Operation Paperclip, as everybody fucking knows. And if you don't, please step out from the rock and wake up and use your eyeballs and your critical thinking abilities to read a book that was not funded by somebody that benefits off of you. Or honestly, read the book that benefits off of you. It'll probably tell you in that one too, because these motherfuckers love bragging. It's like if there's anything we know about humanity is that we are braggers. Okay, we love bragging. So it's not hard to find if you're willing to look for it and accept that that's what it is, because that's where a lot of people fall short. They find it, they can't accept it. It's not on me, man. But yeah, so Operation Paperclip eventually brought over 1,600 Nazi scientists into the American military industrial complex. Many of these individuals who had worked on weapons programs, some were implicated in war crimes, none other than fucking Werner von Braun, motherfucker was a slaver, but they were brought in because they had value. It had nothing to do with the horrible things that they done. In fact, it lets people know that it doesn't matter how horrible of an individual you are, so long as you can bring something of value to the table. Do whatever horrible thing you got to do, so long as you're bringing something of value to the table for American interest, is essentially what we learned from World War II. That you can do the most heinous thing so long as it's in the interest of those who make money off of it. But that's just my reading of it, okay? That's just my reading of it. But yes, over 1,600 Nazi scientists, technicians, and engineers and officers were brought over to work in the military-industrial complex. And This program, if you can even call it that, but it is a program. It is a program, much like everything else. This is a program. You're enjoying this program here, and I'm hoping that this program allows you to apply critical thinking. That would be the ultimate goal of this program. Think for yourself, like truly think for yourself, and not because someone told you to think for yourself, but because you decided to think for yourself of your own free will. And the conclusions that you come to are your conclusions, not those influenced by others, but by yourself. Understanding that you yourself are a reflection of influence. Very, very interesting stuff when you start getting down into it, but neither near nor there. What's here right now, right? What's here right now is the aftermath of this apparatus. And you're probably asking who ran this program. It was the OSS and the military intelligence, okay? And if you're asking who oversaw it, initially, Donovan. And then Dulles in his CIA capacity. And you're probably asking, what does this tell you? It tells you that the American intelligence apparatus will recruit anyone, literally anyone, if they have the right skills and knowledge. It tells you that institutional loyalty matters more than moral considerations. It tells you that once someone is recruited and positioned, they become part of the network, and that network extends across decades. One of the most important people in this Operation Paperclip program was actually, believe it or not, everybody will always talk about Werner von Braun, right? Werner von Braun, V2 rockets. Oh my gosh, right? No, the most important man that came over from Operation Paperclip was a man by the name of Louis Pash. Pash was an OSS officer who had previously supervised interrogations and surveillance of Manhattan Project scientists. He was picked up by Donovan to lead the Aslos mission in it was I'm drawing a blank here. It was an operation to identify and capture German scientists before the Soviets, and it's Alsos, I believe it's pronounced. I just can't fucking remember how it's pronounced, but it's like ALSOS. Who fucking cares about how the fuck it's pronounced? Me personally, I don't. But what's important is that Pash went into the CIA, and then in the CIA, he became head of what was called Program Branch 7. Okay. Program Branch 7 is a division that was responsible for CIA kidnappings, interrogations, and killings of suspected double agents. Okay. This is important because it shows you opportunity. Pash learned interrogation techniques in the OSS. He applied them in Operation Paperclip. He then applied them in CIA operations that would eventually be exposed by the Church Committee in 1976 as illegal and unethical. But the point is, he was part of the apparatus. He was positioned to do intelligence work, and that apparatus sustained itself across decades. Now, fast forward to when the CIA officially began as an institution, right? The National Security Act of 1974 or 1947. I clearly have dyslexia, dyslexia of words and numbers or something. I obviously cannot fucking speak clearly, but 1947 is the year we're in. We started in 1935. We're now in 47. It was all right. So we're in the National Security Act, formed in 1947. See, I keep wanting to say 74. It created the CIA, and it was modeled directly on the OSS, right? That means that many of the same people ran it. It was inherited by the same networks, the same methodologies, and importantly, it inherited the same approach to recruiting and positioning assets. Okay. Now, how the CIA recruited 400 plus journalists between the 50s and 70s, right? Now, this is where we're going to get into next, because in 1977, there was a major revelation in the American press. All right. Carl Bernstein, famous for Watergate with Bob Woodward, published a story that shook journalism forever. Right. The headline: CIA's 3-decade effort to mold the world's news. And what Bernstein had uncovered was a massive, decades long CIA operation to recruit journalists. Not just one or two, not a handful, but over 400 different journalists. 400 across major newspapers, wire services, broadcast networks, magazines, news agencies all over the United States and the world. Okay. Now, the operation had a name: Operation Mockingbird. And it had been running since at least, right? Because there's really no guaranteed verified source of when the fuck it actually began, but they just know that it began somewhere during the early 1950s, right? Just somewhere in that time. Now, if you remember from a couple of videos ago, we actually did a little bit of a tangent dive into that, where we actually live uncovered what was going on during 1950 pop culture, and that probably was when that was taking place, around 1953, 1951, when that large booming pop of media culture was really harboring itself here in the United States. So that could be something, that could be a coincidence. Now, me personally, I don't believe in coincidences in the essence of which coincidences are expected to be believed. Now, do I believe that two things can happen at the same time? Abso-fucking-lutely. I'm talking and moving my hands at the same time. Is that a coincidence? No, right? But people will try to, correlate those things. But what I find to be a coincidence is when two incidences that are both very, 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 very important and have large implications on, like, everything that we know about life as we know it, for like moving forward forever, happening at the same time. I don't find that to be coincidence. I find that to be engineered. Okay, that's something going on right there. I mean, life is full of a lot of fucking interesting things, but I don't know how the fuck you're gonna be so coordinated and at the same time so chaotic. It's just but then again, I've lived it. I've lived life a little bit. So, some people may have a different experience from it, but from what I experience, not everything you see is real. And not everything that's real is something you see. You know what I mean? But yeah, there was a lot of fucking journalists, over 400 fucking journalists that the CIA were just fucking rounding up. And here's how it would work, because it did. It worked really good. The CIA would identify journalists, particularly foreign correspondents, war reporters, freelancers, people with access and credibility. They would approach them. They would propose arrangements. Sometimes it was simple: write a story with this angle. Sometimes it was a little bit more complex. I need you to report on these developments, but emphasize this narrative. Sometimes it was even simpler: share what you learn with us. In return, journalists received classified information. They can use their reporting, money, travel opportunities, institutional support, and protection. This was a very, very intricate network of individuals that knew what they were doing, and they were very much happy doing so because it was making them money. You have to think of, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do jack shit. And you have to understand that my speak, the way I talk, when I'm saying you have to do this, you have to do that, that's just me talking. Okay, that's not me giving you a command. I'm not asking you to do anything. You don't even have to watch this. You can click out of it if you want to. You can do whatever you want. You're a free fucking agent. You can do whatever you want, right? But I just heed a bit of warning. Okay, I just heed to apply critical thinking. Use your brain a little bit. Just think a little bit outside the box. Sometimes think inside the box of the outside of the box. And then when you get outside the box, make sure you're thinking about inside the box to consider that the inside isn't the outside, just in case, But no, I'm fucking with you. But yeah, clearly I am rambling at this point because I forgot what I was saying, and I'm trying my darndest to remember what I was saying, and I figured rambling would help me do that, and it's just not doing it for me. So how about we just jump back 3 seconds and I'll talk about the last thing I remember, and that was that 400 journalists. So 400 journalists, right? CIA. It's fucking around 400 journalists. And they're asking. So I got to say this part for the journalists, all right? For journalism. Some of these journalists didn't know they were working with CIA, okay? They thought that they were just getting good intelligence for their reporting. Some knew exactly, right? Some knew explicitly. They knew exactly what the fuck they were doing. They knew explicitly and cooperated willingly, right? And some were coerced through blackmail and or probably compromise, like, because like you have to think about like people, right? There's going to be some people that are like, yeah, sure, I'll do whatever the fuck you tell me to do. There's going to be some people that are like, no, you got to fucking kill me first. And they might have, and those are the ones you got to coerce a little bit. You got to scare them. You got to be like, but if you think about it, it's just like, how many people have been coming out talking about, they were threatening my family. I was scared for my life, blah, blah, blah. They offered me this, they offered me that and everything. And then they're like, oh, no, we didn't do any of those things. And then we find all the documentation is just like, oh, but you did. And you guys even admitted to doing it because you had to write the files indicating that this is where that money was going, to coercing people. I don't know. I just read the documents. I just see what they say, and I just put the two pieces together, and I'm just like, I'm noticing there's a lot of inconsistencies about these things, and there's a lot of consistencies about these things, but the consistencies aren't aligning with what the narrative is stating that the consistencies are. In fact, the consistencies indicate that what they are stating about the inconsistencies or conspiratorial statements usually kind of line up a bit more than they do with the official narrative, because as we already understand, there's a difference between the official narrative and reality. So if you're going through life looking at nothing but the official narrative, then when you get hit with that reality, it's going to seem really fucking confusing. But if you're living your entire life in the reality scape, when you get hit with that fucking narrative, you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to reject the narrative completely because you recognize that it's bullshit, or you're going to look at it with extreme scrutiny. A lot of people are doing the latter right now. A lot of people are looking at narratives and they're like, I don't know. And I'm fucking proud of you guys for it. I'm fucking happy. I'm like, yes, we have a chance. You know what I mean? We got a fucking chance to stick it to these assholes. But once again, I'm ranting, I'm rambling. Let me goose fraba. Let me chill the fuck out, because I know the shit I'm talking about is freaking huge. So let's redact a little bit here. Okay, so like I was fucking saying, that was Pash, right? talking about Pash. So I talked about Pash. I talked about the fucking the reporters. I just need a reset. I just need a. I feel like see. Let me just story time. How about that? Story time. Let me just do it like that. I got shit that I'm dealing with that makes doing this, which would seem like not a big deal. You're like, what are you doing? You're just talking. You know what I mean? Doesn't seem too hard. Normally, for average people, no, it's not. In fact, it's usually really easy, and it's like what we do as people. But it's just difficult for me because for one, I don't like talking to people. For two, I don't like explaining myself. For three, I don't well, I don't know how to approach this. This is new for me. I don't do this. I don't do this whole thing, right? So for me, it's also an acclimation and an adjustment, and me getting used to walking around and stuff. But the reason why I don't explain myself, it's not because I have a hard time doing so. It's just that I feel it is tiresome to go through the thought process and then to speak about that thought process. Like I've already done the work. It's the equivalent to doing your work when you're in school. Like the teacher would never be able to get me to turn in that goddamn piece of paper because I refused to do the work because my brain just could not translate. But I understand what the work is because I just explained the work. You understand I can do the work. We just went through the work together. Why do you need it on a piece of paper? So they could see that I can do the work. That's kind of stupid. You don't need to see that I can do the work. You could see that the work was done. I don't know. But I'm also an idiot. So stupid man. So who knows? I didn't do my homework, so I don't know. But once again, what I do know is that I totally fucking forgot what I was talking about. See, this is the thing I was talking about earlier before. See, I go into these loops, these random these loops. It's part of it's I got like I said, I'm dealing with shit. Honestly, I don't know why I keep going through this fucking loop right now. Like I'm stuck in a feedback loop. I don't know if you catch it, but that's like kind of the thing that's wrong with me. I get stuck in a feedback loop sometimes. But it comes from severe depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and a plethora of cascading, disability. I can't even pronounce the word disabilitating. Okay, like that's how bad it is. Just start thinking about it and I just start crashing. But I got a dog, so there's that. So that's cool. But anyways, like I was saying, back into the podcast. See, the digression was so hard. I just gotta shut up. Let me just shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. My bad. I'm going through a lot of shit right now. I'm back in the battle. I'm back in the war, right? For a long time, I had to step away and I had to not engage in shit that I saw was wrong. People do things that they're not supposed to be doing, and I usually would for a long time I'd step up and say something, and then I had to stop for a very long time because it was detrimental to my health. And I recently had to pick the fight back up again out of necessity for survival because life is hard, and it's harder when you're not fighting it. Believe it or not, I guess it's harder when you're not fighting it. Or I think that's what I just said. Yeah, got a lot of shit going on, like everybody else does, which is why we kind of why I come to these and talk with these and everything. I like getting on here and talking and whatnot because it helps me like ramble a little bit and get a lot of that extra, energy out of my brain. But it also helps me collect my thoughts. So that way, like, like when we're done going through all this, all these different topics, right? Right now, we're going through the CIA. We're on Operation Mockingbird. We're gonna go through these next topics and whatnot. They're 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 also to assist me in collecting and organizing what exactly is going on. Because I do have a hard time tracking it. There's so much stuff going on all around the world all the time. And every last bit of that information is being thrown into your face under the pretense that this is the most important thing for you to hear right now. Right. And that makes me question what importance is, like what is really important, especially when we start looking at how these intelligence agencies really operate. It makes it makes it difficult for you not to have these questions, to sit there and think like, well, what the hell am I doing? Why am I paying taxes? Why am I going to work every day? Why do I vote? It's just like, and honestly, if that's what you're here for, if you're here to get answers to those questions, I don't have them. I'm still trying to figure that out for myself. All I'm doing is just pointing out pattern recognition. I'm just noticing things that have been going on consistently in this pattern of behavior over the last 70 years and what it can possibly mean for us going on right now and how we can go on moving forward. But then again, I don't know. Once again, I'm a dumb man. I'm just an idiot. I'm just a simple person, just one guy, right? So I don't know. But I do know that I can try to help by providing everything that I can, recollect and bring forth to the table. I do have qualifying certifications or accommodations. I just I opt not to disclose what those qualifications are for my own protection, and that's only so that way I don't have to worry about fucking anybody looking at me or anything like that. And like, see, I've said it before. Like the second that this thing starts getting a lot of views, that's a big problem. I'll get really freaked out and I'll probably stop doing it. You'll never see me again. I'll ghost. I'll delete everything. I'll go ghost. I'll be like, fuck, I was right. I shouldn't have done this. This was a terrible idea. But until that point, I think I'm going to continue to do it because I think that it is important for people to know about this, at least for people to recognize these patterns and maybe come to their own conclusion on what it is that this pattern that I'm seeing is, because maybe it's not what I'm seeing it is, maybe it's something else. But I'm hoping that it's a secret surprise party. I hope that they're doing all this horrible, horrible shit to keep us into this convincing idea that it's like, oh, it's going to be really, really bad. It's like like when a surprise party, like when somebody throws you a surprise party, they give you a bunch of terrible, terrible mishaps to go through. So that was just like, oh my gosh, I can't take another bad thing happening to me. And then surprise, all your friends and family are all there, and they got all your fucking favorite foods and drinks and all that, and they're all waiting for you with your favorite song. Like that. Like, I'm praying to God that's what the government is doing, that they're doing the most audacious fucking gaslit of a surprise party to let us know that they're really trying to save humanity ever. But I don't think that that's the case. You know what I mean? I really don't. So let's prepare as if that's not the case and hope that it is. Murphy's Law: prepare for the worst, hope for the best, right? Or I know it's anything that can happen will happen, but you prepare for the worst and you hope for the best with the knowing that anything that can happen will happen. But yeah, trying to think. I was talking about cover ups. Okay, that's right. So the CIA was recruiting fucking reporters and shit like that, right? This gets exposed in 77, right? Let's just start with that. Let's just pull back there so I know what the fuck I'm talking about. I'm in 1977 right now. So just somebody remind me in 5 minutes that I'm still in the year 1977. Because I need to decompress a little bit, you know. It just happens sometimes. It's 420. Okay. So 1977. Operation Mockingbird gets exposed to the church committee. What they find is fucking staggering. All right. The CIA had relationships with journalists at every major news organization. The New York Times, Washington Post, Time Magazine, Newsweek, the Associated Press, United Press, International, the networks, all of them had CIA relationships. And this was confirmed through the Church Committee investigation in 1977. Once again, all the links are in the description, or I put all the little tabs, right? I've got a bunch of leaks up in there, a lot of information, so you guys can go through all that and look at all that shit if you guys want to go through and, you know, like maybe do some more sleuthing. Maybe I missed something. Okay, maybe I missed something, but at the end of this, let's see if we can figure out what is going on here and if we can identify this very interesting asset. Okay. um but yeah, one of the most famous examples was actually a dude by the name of Joseph Alsop, right? So Alsop was a prominent columnist, and his columns appeared in 300 different newspapers. He had an enormous influence. Okay, this is like, you have to think of this guy like fucking Tucker Carlson of columns for newspapers type shit. Before there's YouTube, this is before the internet, this is before YouTube, this is before all that shit. So all they got is good old newspaper. And fucking Joseph Alsop got over 300 different column papers, right? He's in 300 different newspapers, right? So he's got some good coverage. He's really popular, okay? And Joseph Alsop, right? This guy, he came from an elite East Coast family, right? He had family connections to diplomatic circles. He was educated at elite universities. He moved in the circles where power and influence operated. And when the CIA was looking for someone to shape American opinion about foreign policy to make sure the American public understood the correct perspective on the Soviet threat, on China, and on other various conflicts, they looked for people like Alsop, right? These are people with the right background, the right connections, the right access. And the CIA also had relationships with major publishers and editors. They had what was called a Mighty Wurlitzer. It's a phase. Excuse me, a phase. It is a phase and a phrase, right? It's a phase that they went through, and then they started using the phrase because, you know, I can't say you know, because just in case you don't know, but if you know, you know, and if you don't know, hopefully with enough rigorous vigor, you'll be able to figure it out. But yeah, it was a phrase that was used by CIA's official. It was used by Frank Wisner to describe the agency's ability to orchestrate information through various media channels. They can get stories planted. They could get stories planted in one outlet, picked up by wire services, and then repeated across the country. They could shape national narratives, and they were very, very fucking good at it. And the remarkable thing is, this wasn't a secret. I mean, not really at this point. Alan Dulles was explicit about it. Dulles believed that the struggle against communism was the American public needed to understand the stakes, right? They needed to see foreign policy in the right way. And if journalists needed to be guided in that direction, well, that was necessary. It was just necessary. So now let's look at another extremely important example of CIA asset recruitment, and this one tells us a lot about their methodology. And this young lady's name, I say young lady because she was young at one point. She may not be now, but I like to respect my elders. So this lady's name is Gloria Steinem, right? And anybody who doesn't know about Gloria Steinem became one of the most famous feminists in American history. She founded Miss Magazine. She was the voice for women's liberation. She was an intellectual, a writer, a public figure. But here's what came out, particularly through the church committee investigations, and that was that Gloria Steinem was working with the CIA. She graduated from Smith College in 1956, and you know that's like if you ask me, if you ask me personally, like if you're like, hey B, what do you think about colleges? I would tell you that they are literally just recruitment fields. That's just a station that you go to after. So same with school. School in and of itself is a loyalty recruitment system. That's how they sit there and they pick and choose which ones are truly loyal to the state, and they get pulled into these programs. They pick them, and the younger they can get them, the better, right? That's just me, though. That's just if you ask me. If you ask anybody else, they'll tell you that it's where you go to learn your ABCs or something. But ABCs, CIA, FBI, LMNOPs. But yeah, so Steinem, she graduated from Smith College in 1956, and after college, she was recruited. And this is the term they actually used. It was by the CIA to go to Vienna to the International Youth Festival of 1959. The CIA created an organization called the Independent Research Service to appear to be a grassroots student group. In reality, it was a front organization funded and directed by the CIA. Steinem was appointed as director of recruitment. And we talked about this in a previous episode. I'm not sure if it was the last one or the one before that, but we did talk about this incident in particular. But we'll go into a little bit more detail and about this lady, right? And her job. And her job was to recruit American students to go to this specific youth festival in Vienna and to counter Soviet propaganda. Specifically, the CIA was worried that Soviet youth would dominate the festival and spread communist messaging. They needed American students to argue the American side, to show that American youth were intellectually vigorous and ideologically committed. But here's where it gets interesting, right? Steinem wasn't just recruiting, she was developing messaging. She was studying propaganda techniques, and she was, in effect, becoming herself a CIA asset, a person deployed in a position of influence among American youth to shape their thinking and to ensure ideological alignment with American strategic interests. Now, if anybody were to go look up what the CIA's mission statement was, it is very much similar to what I just said. Very much similar. I mean, in fact, let's get their mission statement up verbatim just so I'm not, being a dick here. Okay, so the CIA's mission statement is to preempt threats and further U.S. national security objectives by collecting foreign intelligence that matters, producing objective all source analysis, conducting covert action as directed by the president, and safeguarding the secrets that help keep the nation safe. Vision. The CIA aims for its information, insights, and action to consistently provide tactical and strategic advantage for the United States. Excuse me. The core principles. CIA officers are guided to key values, including I told you I got that reading problem. Service, integrity. I don't know why that one's in there. Excellence, courage, teamwork, and stewardship, ensuring the agency operates with accountability. That's not accounting. It actually says accountability, not accounting. So no money or anything like that. No dirty operations or anything like that. Just accountability. Diversity. I mean, they definitely, utilize some diversity, don't they? And a focus on national security. Okay, so that is the definition, mission statement, and value of the Central Intelligence Agency. All right. So when this comes out, Steinem says something interesting. She said she felt the CIA was liberal and far-sighted. She said that she never felt dictated to. In other words, her cooperation felt voluntary. She felt aligned with the mission. This is crucial to understanding how asset recruitment actually works. It's not always coercion. It's often, here's a mission we believe in, and here's how you can help. Here's what you'll gain. Okay? That's most often how it happens. The only time it's the prior is if they cannot get you to submit and you are the only person in your position who is capable of completing the task at hand. All right? If you ask me, that's just if you ask me. If I were going to be doing it, I mean, those are probably the only couple of there can't be too many other. But yes. So Steinem went to Helsinki in 1962 for another youth festival. Again, CIA organized. Again, she was helping to coordinate American students and counter Soviet narratives. The budget for these operations was over $100,000, which is, that's a lot of money in the 1960s. Now, the question is, was Gloria Steinem knowingly participating in CIA operations? Yes. Did she understand the political implications? Almost certainly. Was she an asset in the intelligence sense of the term? By definition, yes. She was a person in a position of influence being directed by intelligence interests toward strategic outcomes. But here's what matters, okay? Her background made her valuable. She was educated. She was ideologically motivated. She had access to youth circles. She was eloquent and persuasive. She had family connections that gave her credibility, and all of this made her an ideal asset. When the CIA was looking for somebody to deploy in youth movements and shape their trajectory, they identified somebody like Steinem. And notably, when the CIA connections became public later on, Steinem wasn't destroyed. She remained a major public figure. Her career continued. This is also important to understand. Institutional protection. Once someone becomes part of the network, they tend to be protected by the apparatus because the apparatus takes care of its own. Now, let's look at a different kind of asset operation. And this is one that went beyond just media and youth influence. Okay. Edward Lansdale. Okay. Lansdale is one of the most important figures in CIA history, but he's relatively unknown to the public. Lansdale was born in 1908. He became an Air Force officer, but during World War II, he worked for the OSS. And after the war, he became one of the CIA's most important operatives in Asia. Lansdale worked first in the Philippines in the early 1950s. The Philippine government was fighting a communist insurgency, okay? It's I gotta look this up. I can't fucking pronounce this shit. So let me look this up real quick. I can't pronounce it. Okay. Okay, it is called the Hukbalahap Hukbalahap Rebellion. Hukbalahap. 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 Yes, there you go. See, just got to say it a couple times. Hukbalahap Rebellion, right? The Hukbalahap Rebellion. The Hukbalahap Rebellion. I hope I'm fucking pronouncing that right because I'm gonna fucking try every time now. I had a okay. Anyways, the Hukbalahap Rebellion, right? So the CIA sent Lansdale to help suppress it. What Lansdale did was revolutionary, okay? He applied advertising and marketing principles to counterinsurgency. He created what was called civic action, organizations that appeared to be independent, humanitarian initiatives providing medical care, building schools, helping civilians, and in reality, these were CIA funded operations designed to build support for the Philippine government and undermine the communists. One of these operations was called Operation Brotherhood. It looked like an independent medical and civic organization, and it provided free medical care to Filipino citizens, right? But when it also built schools and it built infrastructure, but it was entirely CIA funded and directed. Okay. It was part of a coordinated propaganda and influence campaign. Lansdale was the mastermind. He understood how to position operations to appear independent while being completely directed by American intelligence interests. He understood how to use seemingly humanitarian initiatives as cover for political operations. And in the mid 1950s, Lansdale was sent to Vietnam. This was before the major American military involvement. Vietnam was still technically a French colonial territory at this time, actually. So, though the French were losing the war against the communists under the Ho Chi Minh, Lansdale's mission out there was to prevent a communist victory through covert action. Okay, so Lansdale established what was called the Saigon Military Mission, and this was an official cover for military advisors helping the South Vietnamese military. But in reality, it was a CIA operation. Lansdale was running intelligence operations agents, insertions into North Vietnam, commando raids, psychological operations, and disinformation campaigns. One specific operation was called Operation Nautilus, and it involved inserting agents into North Vietnam to create dissension, gather intelligence, and conduct sabotage. All right. Lansdale coordinated all of this. He reported directly to Alan Dulles at the CIA. All right. Now, here's what's important. Lansdale was able to do this because he had the right background. He was military, which gave him institutional access. He was an intelligent and he was both intelligent and strategic. All right. He was very, very fucking smart. He understood both operations and propaganda, and he had a family connection that gave him credibility. And he had direct backing from the highest levels of the CIA. So when someone, a youth Vietnamese general, an ambassador, challenged Lansdale on his authority or tried to limit his operations, Lansdale went around them directly to Dulles, and Dulles protected him every single time. And this is how the apparatus works. It assess, excuse me, assets in important positions get institutional protection from the top. Okay. And eventually, Lansdale's operations in Vietnam became part of a larger program called O Plan 34 Alpha or Operation Plan 34 Alpha, whatever one you want to go by. And this program officially under military, it's under military control officially. Like that's the official narrative. The Army's got it, right? Military's got it. Can't say the Army because, when the Army's not the military. Army's part of the military, but it's not the military, right? All right, but control but coordinated, right? It's controlled but coordinated with the CIA. It involved PT boat attacks on North Vietnamese coastal targets, commando raids, agent insertions, and psychological operations. All right. Now, O Plan 34A was active in July of 1964. And on July 30th of 1964, an O Plan 34 Alpha commando raid attacked two North Vietnamese islands. 2 days later, on August 2nd, 1964, the USS Maddox was attacked by North Vietnamese torpedo boats in the Gulf of Tonkin. Right? Now, this is going to be what we all know as the Gulf of Tonkin incident. This is the incident right here that brings the American military into Vietnam for the war. Okay? Now, on August 4th, 1964, there was a reported second attack that never actually happened. An event that was fabricated by intelligence officers, falsified in reports, and used to justify the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, which authorized massive escalation of the war. All right. The point of this is that covert operations create situations. Intelligence operations set conditions for escalation, and the American public is told narratives that justify those escalations. This is the pattern. This is how the apparatus works. And this is how intelligence assets are positioned and deployed. So we're going to continue with some more examples because the pattern recognition requires multiple data points. Okay. It's very important. It's very important not to be like, hey, here's 2 cases, here's 3 cases. That's it. We need to make sure that that this is an established pattern, right? And you can only do that by being very, very rigorous. So Now I'm going to walk you through some cases where we actually have evidence, declassified documents, congressional testimony, captured files that show exactly how intelligence agencies recruit people and position them as assets. All right. So let's start with the National Student Association, right? The NSA, not the National Security Agency, right? But the National Student Association, right? And this is a major student organization here in the United States. It coordinated student activities at hundreds of colleges and universities. It had influence, it had access to young people, and it had a national network. In the 1950s and 1960s, the CIA funded and directed the NSA. This came out in 1967, okay? Through the Ramparts magazine, and it was a major fucking scandal, right? What was the CIA's interest? Young people, right? Young people. That's their interest. It'll always be their fucking interest. Why? Because that's the next generation, dummies. Duh. They want to get the next guys up in there and ready to fucking be voting for the people before they realize that they're fucking even being brainwashed. So of course they're always going to be going after the younger generation. The younger generation defines the next generation. So it's very, very important. Okay. I apologize. You're not dummies. Okay. I'm a dummy. I say dummy because it took me a while. It took me after I got played to realize that one. So, just remember, I'm still very upset at myself for being played as well. So don't be mad. If you are, be mad at me because I didn't tell you guys sooner. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, you guys. You guys got distracted with Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez and all those other freaking, you know, I'm sorry my generation fucking failed you. Okay. I really am. I am deeply, deeply, deeply sorry for the failing of my generation on being able to recognize this and say something and having it go to another generation type shit. Like it should have been done with. Like we should have saw it and been done with it. Like what the fuck is wrong with y'all? For real. Like y'all have no goddamn sense at all. Like no fucking chill. My bad. I apologize. But seriously, what the fuck? Anyways, young people. Okay, the CIA wanted to shape how American college students thought about politics. This is back in the 50s and 60s. Okay, I know I jump back and forth between the years and everything, but it's important to understand these pieces of information because all this stuff is happening for a reason. Okay. It's all happening for a reason. Everything that you're seeing right now, today on your screen, except for, I mean, even you're seeing this for a fucking reason. But I want you to know that the reason you're seeing this is not because somebody wants you to see this, beyond the fact that you need to know why it is that you're not being shown this any sooner than right now. Right. Like, I should not have been the one to be like, okay, let me do the fucking work. Okay, it shouldn't have been done in the first place. There should not have been any work done in the first place. This stuff shouldn't exist. We shouldn't have to be talking about these things, but we are because they do, which is a problem in and of itself. Okay. All right. So they do this. I have to be careful about how I frame things because there's no evidence that they still do this. We just know that they did this. Okay. So they did this through what they called front organizations and proprietary organizations that appeared independent but were actually CIA controlled. They would fund student conferences, educational programs, international exchanges. They would place CIA assets in leadership positions within the NSA. And through these positions, they would shape the organization's priorities and messaging. One of those operations that came out of this was the placement of Americans at international youth festivals. The CIA wanted to make sure that when American students went to international events, they represented the correct perspective, the American perspective, the anti-communist perspective, the perspective aligned with American strategic interests, of course. Now, let's look at another major operation, COINTELPRO. All right. This was the FBI's counterintelligence program, but it overlapped extensively with CIA activities and asset deployment. Okay. COINTELPRO was ostensibly designed to investigate communist infiltration of American organizations. But what it actually did was much broader, okay? It infiltrated civil rights organizations, anti-war groups, radical political movements, and various other organizations that the government considered threats, right? 2 seconds. I just need to turn on this light, rehydrate real quick, and find out where my dog is getting into. Boo. Come on. What are you doing over there? You're such a bum. You got work to do. You got a job. Get in there. Go on. You got a job. You got a job now. Go on. Go on. Go on. Get in there, freeloader. Lay down. You ain't gonna lounge around my house for free. If I'm working, you're working. How do you work? You sit there and you look pretty. He's a pretty dog. No, I'm joking. He ain't making me nothing but, he ain't giving me nothing but gray hairs. Okay. So, how does COINTELPRO work? All right. How did it work? The FBI and the CIA would place informants and agents inside these organizations. These people, often criminals, who were given choices between prison and cooperating, would infiltrate these groups. They would gain positions of influence and would report back to the government. Sometimes they did a lot more than just inform. Sometimes they were provocateurs. They were encouraged illegal actions. They pushed organizations toward violence. They set people up for arrest. This was asset recruitment in the most direct form. Taking someone who's already compromised or vulnerable and turning them into an instrument of the intelligence apparatus. Let's look at specific examples that are documented. David Greenglass and the Rosenberg case. Julius Rosenberg and Ethel Rosenberg were executed in 1953 for espionage, specifically for passing atomic secrets to the Soviet Union. The case against them was largely built on testimony from Ethel's brother, David Greenglass. Greenglass had worked on the Manhattan Project. He had access to classified information about atomic weapons. He had been recruited by whom exactly still to this day is contested. Nobody really knows, to pass information to Soviet intelligence. Okay. When Greenglass was caught, he cooperated. He testified against his sister and brother-in-law, and his cooperation essentially sealed their conviction, which led to their execution. Now, what's interesting about this case is the family aspect. Okay. Greenglass was recruited into espionage. When he was discovered, he turned against his own family members to save himself. This was a family torn apart by intelligence operations. But here's what we need to understand. Greenglass was recruited specifically because he had access. He worked on a classified program. He had information that was valuable. He was an intelligent person with skills. These are exactly the qualities and intelligence agencies look for when recruiting assets. The Whitaker Chambers and the ALDRICH case. Right? Whitaker Chambers was a journalist and Communist Party member. He eventually broke with communism and became a prominent anti-communist in 1948. Chambers made sensational accusations that ALDRICH, a State Department official, was actually a communist spy who had passed documents to Soviet intelligence. Hiss denied. He denied the allegations vehemently. But Chambers had documentation. He had produced a pumpkin patch where he had hidden documents. Right? He was like, fuck, I was just hiding in the pumpkin patch. Great pumpkin. But they became known as the Pumpkin Papers. That's why the Pumpkin Papers. And eventually Hiss was convicted of perjury, right? Statute of limitations had expired for espionage charges. So they still sent him to prison, right? What's important about this case for our purpose is the nature of the recruitment. Okay? How does the Soviet Union recruit American government officials? They look for people in important positions. They identify them. They approach them, sometimes through romantic relationships, sometimes through appeals to ideology, sometimes through appeals to money. But they target people who are already embedded in the power structure. Hiss was in the State Department. He had access to classified information. He had influence over foreign policy. For the Soviets, he was an ideal asset. Later in the Cold War, we get even clearer examples of this methodology, okay? Which is fucked. You'd think that after the Cold War, like, you'd see it less, but you actually see it more, okay? So, Aldrich Ames. Ames is a CIA officer. His father had been a CIA analyst. So, Ames grew up around intelligence work. He was recruited into the CIA himself. He rose to the ranks. He eventually worked in counterintelligence, which meant he had access to information about all American intelligence sources and operations. In 1985, Ames started spying for the KGB. He sold classified documents for money. He compromised the names of American intelligence sources working inside the Soviet Union. Several of these people were executed. What's interesting about Ames's recruitment into espionage is his background. His father was CIA. His wife had government connections. He moved in intelligence circles. He was educated, credentialed, and positioned within intelligence apparatus. When the KGB approached him and recruited him to spy, they were approaching somebody who already had decades of experience in intelligence works, who understood how the system worked and how to hold deep access, and who had deep access, right? Now, Ames is a double agent case. He was recruited by Foreign Intelligence Service, but the methodology was the same. They identified someone with access and vulnerability. They approached him and they turned him. Robert HANSSEN. HANSSEN was an FBI counterintelligence agent from yeah. He was FBI, right? I'm losing track. Robert HANSSEN. Yes. Robert HANSSEN. Yes. So, Robert HANSSEN was FBI counterintelligence, okay? Like Ames, he had access to classified information about American intelligence operations. Starting in 1979, HANSSEN began spying for the KGB and later the SVR. He continued spying for over 20 years, remaining undetected the entire time. What made HANSSEN so valuable? Financial problems, family stress, a sense of grievance against the institution. These are the things the intelligence agencies look for. They assess vulnerability. They understand human psychology. They know what motivates people. But here's what's important. HANSSEN, like Ames, was positioned in an institution that gave him tremendous access. He was trained in counterintelligence, which meant he understood how the FBI looked for moles. He was able to evade detection for 2 decades because he understood the very systems designed to catch him. This tells us something crucial about asset recruitment and positioning. Intelligence agencies don't just recruit people randomly. They identify people who are already in the system, already have access, already understand how power works. Okay? They position them in roles where they have maximum utility. And then, if they're turned by an opposing service, the damage is catastrophic. Anna Chapman, Russian illegals program. Anna Chapman was a Russian SVR operative, actually Russian, like she was actually, like she was actually a right. She was Russian intelligence that sent her to the United States to spy, right? So Russian intelligence sent to the United States is what they call an illegal, which is an intelligence officer without diplomatic cover who lives as a private citizen while conducting espionage. Chapman was the daughter of a KGB officer. She grew up in Russian, but she spoke perfect English. All right. Just gonna put that out there. She was first sent to London, where she infiltrated wealthy banking and legal circles. She presented herself as a real estate agent. She built social networks. She made connections. The entire time, she was assessing potential intelligence targets. Then she moved to New York. Again, she set up a real estate business. Again, she infiltrated wealthy circles. She had a cover job. She appeared to be a normal businesswoman, but she was actually an intelligence officer, assessing potential sources for recruitment and passing information back to the SVR. Chapman was part of what was called Operation Ghost Stories, a long-term SVR operation that placed multiple illegals in the United States under civilian cover, allowing them to develop deep networks and relationships while conducting espionage. Here's what's important about Chapman for our purposes, all right? And it's her profile. She was young, educated, culturally sophisticated, tech savvy. She can blend into American society while working as an intelligence operative. She had family intelligence connections. Her father was KGB. She was trained in SVR tradecraft, and she was positioned in a society where she could move through elite circles, make connections, and identify recruitment targets. She was eventually arrested in 2010, and it turned out that the entire Russian illegal officer network had been compromised by an American mole, a CIA officer named Colonel Dmitry Polyakov, who had been reporting on Russian operations to the CIA for years. So we have a network of Russian illegals, all positioned in American society under civilian covers, conducting intelligence operations right? We have an American inside the CIA reporting on Russian operations to the CIA, and we have multiple layers of deception and counter deception. That's how the intelligence world actually works, right? It's a complex network of positioned assets, all operating undercover, all trying to identify and recruit other assets. Now, let's synthesize what we're seeing. What are the consistent patterns, right? What intelligence agencies actually look for, right? Across all these cases, Operation Mockingbird, Gloria Steinem, Edward Lansdale, Operation Chaos, the Rosenbergs, Alger Hiss, Aldrich Ames, Robert HANSSEN, Anna Chapman, and dozens of others are consistent patterns, right? It's intelligence agencies use what's called SADRAT methodology. Now, let me break this down. SADRAT stands for spotting, assessing, developing, recruiting, agent handling, termination. Okay? Spotting. Intelligence agencies identify potential assets. They look at who has access, who has information, who has influence, who moves in circles where power is exercised. They create profiles. They gather background information. Once someone is spotted, right? They're assessed. What are their vulnerabilities? What are their needs? What would motivate them? Financial hardship, ideological commitment, romantic involvement, a desire for recognition or influence, blackmail material. Intelligence agencies understand human psychology deeply. They have psychologists working for them. They understand what motivates people. Okay. And that moves us into development. That was assessing. Development is before formal recruitment. There's relationship development, all right? Maybe it's a chance meeting. Maybe it's an intermediary introduction, an intermediary introduction. Maybe it's being offered a job opportunity. The target is cultivated. They're made to feel special. They're given information or access that flatters them. They're made to feel like they're part of something important. Okay. Recruiting. Once development is complete and that person is sufficiently motivated, the formal recruitment is made. Usually it's framed in terms that appeal to them. We need your help. Your country needs you. This is important work. You'll be compensated. Or sometimes it's more direct. We have evidence of X, Y, and Z about you, and cooperation is your option, right? Agent handling. Once someone is recruited, they're managed. They have handlers, they have instructions, they have communication protocols. They're given tasks. Their work is evaluated. They're protected if they're valuable. They're discarded if they become liabilities. Termination. Eventually, the relationship ends. Sometimes the person retires from intelligence work. Sometimes they're reassigned. Sometimes they're exposed. Sometimes they're killed if they become a security threat. This is the framework. Now, what specific qualities do intelligence agencies look for when they're spotting and assessing potential assets? Well, first is access. The person needs to have access to something valuable, whether it's information, institution networks, anything. If you don't have access, you're not useful. The second is education and credibility. Intelligence agencies prefer recruiting educated people, people who have credentials, people who can move through sophisticated circles without standing out. Elite university education is preferred because it provides both intellectual capability and social access. The third is institutional background. If someone's parents or family members worked in government, military, or intelligence, that's a positive indicator. It means the person is already somewhat familiar with institutional thinking. It means they have family networks in these spaces. And the fourth is ideological alignment. Intelligence agencies want people who already agree with their strategic worldview. It's easier to recruit someone who believes in anti-communism or American primacy, uh, or whether the agency's strategic goal is, whatever it is. It doesn't really fucking matter. Um, which is much easier than recruiting somebody who needs to be convinced, right? I just gotta. I think. I think my lady's home. Hold on. I think my lady's home. What you think? Is there a lady in the house? Oh boy. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Go on, get up there, boo. Yes, my lady's which is my bed. Where was he at? Psychological potential. Is there someone already in the agency who knows this person? Is there an intermediary who can make an introduction? Right? Intelligence agencies work through networks and relationships. Cold recruitment is much harder than recruitment through existing networks. And of course, seventh is plausible deniability, right? The person needs to have a legitimate reason for their position or activities. They need cover. If they're a journalist, their journalism provides cover for intelligence gathering. If they're a businessman, their business provides cover. If they're in government, their job provides cover. The asset needs to have a legitimate role that explains their access and activities. Now, let me give you a synthesis of what the profile of an ideal intelligence asset looks like. Okay. This is just the synthesis. An ideal intelligent asset comes from a family with connections to government, military, or business. They're educated at elite institutions. They're ideologically motivated towards values of the intelligence service that's recruiting them. They're positioned in institutions that give them access, media, government, business, advocacy organizations. They have the ability to move through sophisticated circles without standing out. They're personally ambitious. They're intelligent and articulate. They understand institutional politics, and they have some psychological vulnerability that can be exploited to ensure cooperation. Jesus Christ, I sound more and more like a fucking acid every day. And now, that's the ideal profile, right? Does such a person actually exist? Not ideally. Not ideally. I think that the idea that the ones that hit a lot of those aren't ideal. But that's just me. Our intelligence, but yes, yes, they actually do. Yes, there's people that align with that. Absolutely. 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. It's very, very easy for somebody to align with those descriptions. Dang, this thing gets so freaking dark. I'm like struggling to see myself, let alone you guys. Let me see if I can't make that a little brighter. The ISO a little bit. There you go. That's a little better. Should be a little bit more better for now. Just for now. Okay. There we go. That should be a little bit better. Actually, I think my back screen makes it a little bit brighter. There we go. Okay. Now that's the ideal profile, okay? Right? But are intelligence agencies actually out there building these profiles and recruiting according to this blueprint? Yes. Absolutely. And the evidence is fucking overwhelming. And importantly, this methodology, this way of thinking about asset recruitment transcends any single country or intelligence agency. All right? The Americans do it. The Russians do it. The Israelis do it. The British do it. It's the standard methodology. Now let's look at how other intelligence agencies operate, because it's important to see that this isn't unique to America. Okay. The KGB used similar methodology. They had what was called the illegals program, placing Russian intelligence officers in foreign countries under civilian cover for long-term asset development and espionage. They understood that long-term positioning was more effective than short-term recruitment. They would place an illegal in a country, allow them to establish themselves in business or society, build networks and relationships over time, develop sources, and conduct operations, right? Anna Chapman was part of this program. So were many others. The KGB was particularly effective at recruitment through what they called MICE: money, ideology, compromise, and ego. Now, we saw Sadrat, and now we see MICE. Now, there's something about this and that should let you know that you're nothing but a fucking, experiment being ran, right? But that's just me. That's just if you ask me. Now, they understood that different people were motivated by different things. For some, it was money. For others, it was ideological commitment to communism. For others, it was blackmail. They had compromising information that would be exposed unless the person cooperated. For others, it was ego. They wanted to be important, to be part of something significant, to be recognized for their intelligence and capabilities. The Israelis, Mossad, their use was very similar methodology. Okay. They had significant successes recruiting assets in the Arab world, in Europe, as well as in the United States. Their approach emphasizes long-term relationship development. They understand that the best recruiting relationships are the ones where the asset feels like they're acting voluntarily, that they're supporting a cause they believe in rather than being coerced or manipulated. Mossad, like other intelligence agencies, look for people with access, education, and motivation. They've recruited journalists, okay, business people, academics, government officials. They understand that the person with the most valuable information is often the one with the most legitimate position, the one who's not obviously an intelligence operative, the one who has a normal job that explains their activities and access. Okay. So the methodology is universal. It transcends national boundaries. It's the standard operating procedure for intelligence agencies worldwide. Now, here's the crucial point of what we're going to talk about in the second half of this podcast. This methodology has been consistent for 70 years, and it hasn't changed fundamentally since the OSS era. The tools have changed, technology, communications, surveillance, but the core approach remains the same. Intelligence agencies are still looking for people with educational credentials, seeking family backgrounds connected to government or military, identifying people in positions of influence, assessing psychological vulnerabilities, developing relationships over time, offering opportunities that seem legitimate, and building networks that can be deployed toward institutional goals, protecting their assets and maintaining operational security, and using plausible deniability as the cornerstone of their operations. This is the pattern. This is how it works. And once you understand the pattern, you can look at individuals and ask, does this person's trajectory align with the pattern? Or are there indicators suggesting this person was recruited? Is there logical institutional purpose for their positioning? What are we doing? Right? But that's where we're going to be going into on the second half of this motherfucker, right? Now, this part right here, I've been fighting on whether or not I even want to talk about it, but we're just going to fucking do it. We're just going to, probably shouldn't have said this, but here we go, okay? Now, we're going to be focusing on Charlie Kirk here. All right. This is a case study in rapid institutional rise. All right. We're going to be going from college dropout to $90 million power network. Okay. So, understanding the individual before the asset. We got to do that first. Okay. So, we're going to shift focus because we've already established how intelligence agencies recruit. We've looked at historical examples. We've seen the pattern. And now we're going to examine a specific contemporary case. Charlie Kirk. Okay. Charlie Kirk was a real person. Okay. This was a guy, right? This was a real guy, right? He's a public figure. All right. He founded Turning Point USA, which is one of the most influential conservative organizations in the country. He has millions of followers. He's close to Donald Trump. He's powerful. My condolences. I don't see that shit's still a fucking shock to me. Like, it's just like, it's wild because, like, it's just weird to even process that, like, somebody could just be so quickly, and still, I don't know, but he was very powerful. He had a lot of influence. And the question we're going to be exploring is, does his trajectory, his background, and his institutional positioning, his relationships, do they align with the patterns we've seen in intelligent asset recruitment? Now, I want to be absolutely clear before we start. We're not saying Charlie Kirk is a known intelligence asset. There is no declassified document proving this. There is no smoking gun. What we're asking is, no pun intended, given what we know about intelligence recruitment, given the patterns we've identified, and given his specific biographical trajectory, what does the evidence suggest? Okay? That's all we're asking here. So let's start with Charlie's background in his early life, okay? Because, like I said, it's kind of surreal for me, right? It's kind of surreal for me. We're very, very, very similar in a lot of ways. But Charlie Kirk was born on October 14th, 1993. He's just a couple months older than me, actually. He was born in Arlington Heights, Illinois. His father is an architect, right? His father was an architect. His mother is a guidance counselor. I don't know a lot about them. All right. I just knew that he was born in 93. And his household was very conservative, and that the Kirk family wasn't wealthy, right? These guys, they weren't the richest people, but they were stable. It was educated, and there was an ideological they were ideologically aligned with what would become the conservative movement, right? He's kind of held these views for the better part of his life. From early childhood, he was interested in politics. He read conservative literature. He was influenced by figures like Ronald Reagan. He wanted to be part of the political movement, and by his teenage years, he was already politically activated. And we see this, right? This is well documented. By the age at 17 in 2010 or 2011, I can't I don't know. I don't remember. Charlie wrote an op-ed for uh, Breitbart News criticizing what he called indoctrination in American high school textbooks. The op-ed was published, and he made a media appearance to discuss it. At 17, he was already being published on a major conservative platform, appearing on television, right? And this was notable because it shows early media access. It shows someone, either Breitbart or his network, recognized Charlie's value and amplified him. By his late teens, Charlie Kirk was positioned as a voice for conservative youth. In 2011, Charlie enrolled in college at Illinois State University, but something happened that would change his trajectory fundamentally. A man named Bill Montgomery approached him. Montgomery was 72 years old at the time. He was a retired marketing entrepreneur, and he had been involved in the Tea Party movement. Montgomery had heard Charlie speak at Benedictine University during a youth government day event in May 2012. And according to Charlie's own account, Montgomery told him, "You can't go to college. You should start a political organization instead." Shit, cool. This was a crucial moment, though, for the guy. So this is where a potential mentorship relationship begins. A 72-year-old successful businessman who had already made his money, who was already established, who had institutional credibility. This person approached a 17-year-old kid and told him to drop out of college and start a political organization with him. Okay. Well, I mean, like any kid at 17, he listened. Charlie listened. And in June of 2012, the day after his high school graduation, Charlie Kirk and Bill Montgomery launched Turning Point USA. Now, let's ask some basic fucking questions here. Why would a 72-year-old retired businessman decide to partner with a 17-year-old high school graduate to start a political organization? What was his motivation? What did he see in Charlie? What was the strategic purpose? Because he's a businessman. You don't put money into something unless you know you're getting something out of it. All right. That's just business 101. All right. So Bill Montgomery clearly saw something. He saw a young person who was already connected to media. He saw someone who was intelligent and articulate. He saw someone who could appeal to young voters. And importantly, he saw someone who was not yet established, not yet independent, not yet confident in his own power. Someone who was malleable, someone who could be shaped. And over the next several years, what Turning Point USA did was build an extraordinary institutional infrastructure. Starting in 2012, they established a 501c3 nonprofit. They created what's called Turning Point Action, a political action committee that could raise unlimited money from donors. They built a network of student organizations on college campuses. They created media presence, they held conferences, and they raised millions of dollars. By 2016, Charlie Kirk was speaking at the Republican National Convention. He was a prominent voice in conservative politics. He was 22 years old. By 2018, he was named to Forbes 30 under 30 list. He was incredibly successful by any measure, really. By 2023, when Charlie was 30 years old, Turning Point USA had an annual revenue of over $80 million. The broader network of organizations under the Turning Point umbrella had estimated an annual revenue of $92 million. Charlie's personal salary was $407,000 per year. Okay? He was making a lot of money. Charlie Kirk had gone from a high school graduate in 2012 to the head of a $92 million a year political organization in approximately 10 years. Okay? And this is an extraordinarily rapid rise in American politics. This is notable. Usually, such rise takes decades. Usually, someone builds a career gradually working in politics, raising money, establishing a network, gradually gaining influence and resources. Charlie Kirk's rise was meteoric. Okay, it was huge. It was probably one of the biggest ones that's ever been. And importantly, throughout the rise, Charlie maintained deep connections to the Republican establishment, to wealthy donors, and increasingly to the Trump family. Now, he became Trump's favored youth organizer. He was part of Trump's inner circle. Like, they're buddy. They're good guys, right? They're great. Everybody's great, right? So let's ask. Let's ask a simple question right quick. What made this rapid rise possible? How did Bill and Charlie build this infrastructure so quickly? And the answer is money and institutional backing. Turning Point USA raised $489 million between 2012 and 2023. This money came from donors. Let's look at some of those major donors, okay? So we have Foster Friess was one of the earliest and larger donors, right? He was one of the largest donors, actually. Friess is a wealthy businessman from Wyoming who made his fortune in investment industry. He was a Tea Party supporter. He gave Turning Point tens of millions of dollars over the years. Bernard Marcus, another major donor. Marcus is the co-founder of Home Depot. He is a billionaire. He gave significantly to Turning Point. Charles Johnson, founder of Franklin Templeton, one of the largest investment companies in the world, gave millions to Turning Point. Richard, I'm going to pronounce this guy's name. I can't pronounce that, Dick. I just can't pronounce your name, Dick. But a printing company owner and major Republican donor gave millions to Turning Point. Okay, these are extraordinary. These are really rich fucking people. Okay, like I'm not even gonna fucking sit here and try to fucking sugarcoat it for you. These are rich fucking people. Okay, they were willing to fund Charlie Kirk's organization. Why? What did they see in Turning Point USA? The answer is influence. Okay, like you got to remember that they go hand in hand. There's only a few things that you give money for power, you give power for influence, you give influence for money. They kind of go hand in hand, right? So Turning Point USA under Charlie Kirk's leadership became an influential force in Republican politics. It had presence on college campuses, it had media reach, it could mobilize voters, it could shape narratives for wealthy donors who wanted influence in Republican politics. Turning Point USA was an excellent investment. It was beautiful. But here's what's important. The relationship was not one directional. Turning Point USA didn't just accept money from these donors and operate independently. Rather, Turning Point USA became the vehicle through which these donors exerted influence. Additionally, Turning Point USA used what's called dark money mechanisms. They receive funding through donor advised funds like Donor Trust and Bradley Impact Fund, which obscure identities of actual donors. This allowed major donors to give money to Turning Point without their names being publicly associated with it. Now, let's think about Charlie Kirk's psychological profile during this period, okay? Charlie was a young, in his 20s and 30s, right? He's young. Same age as me. Literally. He was brilliant. He's articulate and he's very charismatic. He had enormous capacity to influence young people. He was ideologically committed to conservative politics. He was ambitious and he wanted power and influence. But he was also dependent. He was dependent on Bill Montgomery for mentorship and direction in his early years. He was dependent on major donors for funding. He was dependent on media platforms for his voice to be heard. He was dependent on Republican establishment and the Trump family for credibility and protection. Now, as Charlie grew older and more established, and his Turning Point grew larger and more influential, Charlie's decision making seemed to shift. He became increasingly prone to promoting conspiracy theories. He became increasingly divisive and confrontational. He became increasingly focused on personal brand and media presence. Why? Well, there could be many reasons, okay? People change. Success can change people. Power can corrupt judgment. But there's another possibility which we'll explore. What if Charlie Kirk's trajectory was shaped not just by his own ambition and skill, but by institutional interests who saw his value and positioned him accordingly? Let's think about this. A young person with intelligence and charisma is identified. A mentor figure is provided, Bill Montgomery, who guides him towards political organizing. Significant funding is provided, allowing him to build institutional infrastructure rapidly. He's given media platforms and credibility. He's connected to powerful people, the Trump family, Republican leadership, major donors. He's protected from real consequences when his statements or actions are controversial. Sound familiar? If if it does, it should, because it's the pattern we saw with Edward Lansdale, with Gloria Steinem, with Operation Mockingbird. Identify, assess, develop, recruit, handle, protect. Now, the question is, if Charlie Kirk were an intelligence asset, what would be the purpose? What would be the institutional value? Turning Point USA under Charlie's leadership became a vehicle for mobilizing young conservative voters. It had influence on college campuses, it had media presence, it can shape youth political culture. It was positioned at the intersection of youth activism and political organizing and media influence. For any intelligence or strategic interest waiting, excuse me, hold on, I gotta close this up. Waiting to influence American youth by political culture, Turning Point USA would be an extraordinarily valuable asset. It was positioned in exactly the right institutional space. And importantly, Turning Point USA's operations were largely opaque. Where did the money actually go? What specific strategies were employed? Who made decisions about what messages were promoted? These details were not transparent. The organization operated within murky space between political activism and corporate political spending where accountability is minimal. Now, I want to be clear about what we're asking and what we're not asking. We're not asking, is Charlie Kirk knowingly working for an intelligence agency? What we're asking is, given the patterns of intelligence asset positioning we've identified, given Charlie Kirk's rapid institutional rise, and given the funding sources that supported him, given his access to youth political culture and media, given his psychological profile and dependencies, what does the evidence suggest about his positioning? Is it possible that Charlie Kirk is exactly what he appears to be, a successful political entrepreneur who built something remarkable? Yes, absolutely, that's possible. It is also possible that his trajectory was shaped by institutional interests who recognized his value and positioned him accordingly. Also, yes, also possible. Can we prove the latter? Not with the evidence currently available to the public, but we can recognize the pattern. Now, let's bring in the second part of this equation. Erica. Okay. Erica Kirk is born November 20th, 1988. She is raised in Scottsdale, Arizona by her mother, Lori Francefay, and her father, Kent Francefay. I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced. I hear different pronunciations everywhere, so I'm just going with Francefay because that sounds about right. But they got he divorced the mom, right? Kent divorces the mom in 1989. So let's start with the family background because this is where the pattern becomes really fucking evident. All right. So Erica's mother, Lori, worked for General Electric for approximately 20 years. Okay. General Electric is one of the largest corporations in the world. It is deeply embedded in the defense and intelligence Booth, if you don't get up out of that computer box, you cannot go down there. You cannot go down there, Booth. I know. You cannot. You just can't go down there and play. Okay. Where was I? Lori. Yes. So she's part of General Electric, right? She's been working there for 20 years. It's the largest corporation in the world, and it's deeply embedded in the defense and intelligence contracting ecosystem. GE makes military equipment. GE does classified contracts with the US government. The dog has something to say, and he's like, please stop talking about these classified things. They do not need to know about these things, Dad. They do not need to know about these things. Okay. Additionally, well, oh, boy, what is it? What is it? What you need? What you need? He's like, I gotta tell you something. I gotta tell you something. Need? What do you need? What do you gotta tell me? What do you gotta tell me? You can't get up here, Booth. You want to get up here? You can't get up here. You're too big for all that. You're too big for all that. Look at you. Look at this Booth. He's about to break something. There you go. Chill. Chill. Look at him. He's like he thinks he is a lapdog this hard. This is how hard he thinks he's a lapdog. Get back. Get back. You're not a lapdog, Boof. You're not a lapdog. Goodness gracious. No, you're just trying to get that stuff. I know. Okay. Okay. I think he needs to use the bathroom. I'll be right back. We've only been talking for 2 hours, so that's probably why. He's got to go. All right. He's like, yes. Get off that bed. Sit. Take a seat, young Skywalker. Sit. Booty down. Stay. You said what? Oh, thank you. Yeah, give me like 30 seconds. That was not even 30 seconds. Okay, let's see. We're gonna put a pin in this right here. We're already at 2 hours and 17 minutes. I need to figure out a proper time in which I can get through these. Obviously, I can only get through 2 hours worth before I need to take this break, but I need to eat. I need to use the restroom myself. The dog needs to eat. My lady's home. So we're going to pick this up tomorrow morning. And there's no need for me to sit there and take any time out of it. So I'm going to have the schedule set up tonight and it'll be up tomorrow morning. I'll be up again first thing tomorrow morning. We'll finish this off. We're going to continue off here talking about the Kirks. We just got through Charlie. We're going to be talking about Erica. Be sure to give it a run back, listen through, tell me what you think, drop a comment in the chat box thing. I'm not doing I don't do the pre-recorded videos. I bet those are probably better for me, but the reason why I like to do the live stream is because, like, at any point in time, somebody can come in here and be like, actually, I need to interject on that point, at any point, man, you know what I mean? Like, honestly, because that's how the conversation starts. And then that's where you got like, some engagement going or anything. Because, I hate talking to myself, but, that's just me. But then again, I don't like talking to anybody. So maybe don't. I don't know. I mean, don't be nervous to like interact or anything like that. You know what I mean? What's the worst is gonna happen? When am I gonna fucking like? No, don't worry about it. Yeah, but yeah, like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. We'll be back tomorrow morning talking about this Kirk stuff. We're just trying to figure out whether or not I'm not making any assumptions, nor am I making any accusations. I would never do that. I would never accuse. Right? But my gut is telling me that based on all of the patterns in the historical lineups of how it is that them motherfuckers like to play the game, something tells me that this one right here might be more than what sees at the eyes. You know what I mean? The eye of the beholder type thing. You know what I mean? But I ain't trying to open up Pandora's box. I'll let her do that all by herself. So, I mean, like I said, we'll pick this up tomorrow morning. I'll finish talking up about the rest of Erica. Then we'll go into some other things here. Yeah, I got a couple of things to go up on here. Yeah, we're gonna be. Just know that tomorrow morning, part 2 is gonna be just as fucking fun as part 1 was. All right, just know that you guys are in for for some shits and giggles, man. Like what? Like we don't even know yet. But yeah, so just stand fast, sit back, enjoy the ride. You know, like I said, like, comment, and subscribe. We'll hit you back up in the AM. Take it easy, y'all. Deuce.